Welcome to Farm Science Review. Brent Raines and I are out here in the hayfield doing some demonstrations on baling. Brent, what are some of the things we're going to cover today?
Well, we're going to talk about bale size, we're going to talk about moisture, we're going to talk about hayfield housekeeping. And we found a suspect right out here while we were baling today. Aluminum can. It's not going to bode well inside a cow or in a TMR. So if you see one in the field, take the time to get out and pick it up. Hi everybody, Brent Raines for Krone. Today we're going to be looking at the Comprima series of round balers from Krone. You know, there are three different types of balers that are available. Small squares, which everyone out there in Hayland, you know, we loaded wagons at Grandpa's or Uncle Fred's or whatever, the small square bale. And then we have large square bales, which are increasing in popularity. Very high capacity, very high output. Densities are great, but you know, it's a lot of money, a big investment. And you know, round balers have been on the scene since the early 60s. There's a variety of different types and styles, fixed chamber balers and also variable chamber balers. So what we're going to talk about is our Krone series of round balers. They're built specifically with wet hay in mind. So a lot of our components are heavier than standard balers. The structures are heavier than standard balers, because when we get that optimal weight or that optimal moisture in that 50-ish moisture category, you know, we're talking a lot of water, a lot of weight, and you know, it's not uncommon to have bales 1,800 to 2,000 pounds. So that presents challenges in handling, and that also presents challenges for some models of balers. So when we start talking about our baler, what makes it unique is it is a combination of a belt and a bar baler. We use what we call a Novo grip system, and it provides constant contact with the bale to eliminate slippage. And that tends to be an issue with a lot of models of balers, especially when we're talking wet material, so that we get enough traction and you know, enough grip to make sure that we get good bale rotation, good formation, and good shape. You'll notice our pickup that we have on our baler is hot dip galvanized. A lot of balers use applicators of some kind. They're either using a propionic acid, they're using some kind of a dry powder, and the galvanized that we use on the scraper on the pickup, albeit it's not perfect, it's a lot more resistant than just paint when you're putting some of those bale life extenders or moisture enhancers into your bale. Also, we use a staggered tine design with our pickup to ensure that we get a nice, even, smooth crop. Ideally, we would like to have our windrow. It's not going to happen here today, but ideally we would like to have a wide windrow that will go between our tractor tires, so we can eliminate the need for weaving back and forth, so we get a nice bale fill all the way through. Let's talk about the binding. Let's talk about putting the crop together. You know, we can use twine, or the big time saver / money saver is net wrap. So, you know, we utilize a net wrap material, 2.5, in most cases with dry hay, 2.5 revolutions, you know, and we're done. So we're saving, you know, in a normal day, we may be able to do 8 to 10 more bales per hour with net wrap because of the time savings than we could with twine, and you know, that may be 80-90 bales a day. So when you talk about fuel savings, when you talk about labor savings, wear and tear on the tractor, just overall operating, you know, the net wrap is a way to go. More and more guys are, more and more producers, excuse me, are becoming interested in plastic, film on film. And our round balers have a kit that's available to allow you to replace that twine or that net wrap with plastic. So if you're going to make a wet bale, then you can go ahead and handle it. Advantage to that is, when it's 10 below zero, in central Ohio in early January, that plastic will come right off the bale. It doesn't have a tendency to freeze to the bale. The other thing is, when we're talking about recycling, we have one product to recycle. So we don't have a pile of net wrap and we don't have a pile of plastic. We've just got one product. Many counties here in the state of Ohio have recycling programs that are in place for the plastic that's used to wrap round bales, simply because the quality of that material is so high, and it's only used one time. So, you know, a couple of different ways we can go there. Now let's talk about the crop itself. Our crop that we have here was very short and light, but we still had the opportunity is we cut the crop. And you can see here what we did, and notice how short the material is. Our balers come with either 17 or 27 knives, depending on the model, that will allow you to get a theoretical length of cut that brings the material down to in the 2-inch or 2.5-inch range. For the beef producer, you reduce waste. You don't have the waste that you get if you're feeding with some kind of a wagon, or if you're feeding with some kind of a ring. You don't get you'll reduce the amount of waste when the cow goes to eat. The other thing you'll get is you'll get better bale density and better bale shape, because of the shorter particles allow us to compress it tighter and get more of the air out of it when we do that. The thing, if you're on the dairy side of the equation, this saves you a lot of time when you put the hay in your TMR, because your hay is pre-chopped. You know, the material is pre-cut. And the way we do that, and if we can save time with the TMR mixer and tractor, run more than any other machine on a dairy farm. So if we can reduce that by 20, 30, maybe even 40%, it's going to be a real time saver and a real money saver for you to go that. So maybe you want to consider, when you're making a round bale purchase, you may want to consider adding knives. So here's one of our knives. It can be removed. You can mix or match any combination that you want to determine the length of cut inside the bale. They are resharpenable over on one side. You can take a battery operated 4-inch grinder, sharpen that blade, put a nice edge, always sharpen where you're moving the heat back into the blade rather than out into the tip, so that you don't develop a wire edge. But that's going to be a big time saver and a big money saver if you're doing hay that's going to be used in either advantages for dairy or advantages for beef. So, you know, like I said before, our machines are designed to handle the strain and the rigorous use that goes with bale silage, but they do a great job in dry crop. Corn stalks, we have peanut hay. There's a lot of different materials that customers will, if we can roll it up, put it in a bale, our customers, our farmers and ranchers are going to try it, especially in these past few years have been real challenging. A lot of opportunity feeds, sorghum, Sudan, of course alfalfa, all types of grasses, but we're seeing a broader range of forages that are being brought into round balers. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Aden Russell jump on our Fendt 519 from Lau and Young, and we're going to roll up a couple bales of hay here at Farm Science Review in London, Ohio. but we've made our first bale. We want to evaluate it and see if we're on the right track. So a couple things we're going to want to check. Bale shape, a lot of bale shape is going to be determined by the quality of the raking job, the presentation of the crop to the baler. And the baler driver will gain a new sense of appreciation for a really good rake operator. You want to do a nice even windrow. You want to do them as straight as possible. You want to make that presentation as wide as possible underneath, so it'll go underneath your tractor, but still eliminate the need for weaving back and forth. So the reason we can tell we did that, or we had a real good man on the steering wheel, was if we look at the side of the bale. If we look at this all the way around, it's even. And we have a good fill all the way across. Because if this was short, if maybe we had tried to combine two small windrows and we had that gap in between, you may have seen a dip right here in the middle of the bale that you'd have to contend with. Or you'll see a bale that looks like this, or a bale that looks like that. So that presentation of the crop to the bale is critical as far as bale quality. So another thing we can look for is our density. So we want to feel across the top of the bale and make sure that we've got good fill all the way across as we go. The other thing, our binding method. Either we're going to use twine, we're going to use net wrap, or we're going to use plastic. In this application, we use net wrap. We have our net wrap set where it's just drawn over the edge to make sure that our bale is aesthetically correct, but also is going to make sure that when we're doing a lot of handling, it still makes sure that your bale shape is maintained. The one thing that I will suggest, or I've noticed from some operators, if this net wrap gets too far over, and many guys feed this way in a ring, in a bale circle, when you cut the net wrap off and you think you've got it all peeled off, you've left that little strip, that little racing stripe of net wrap that's underneath it. And if this is a bale of silage, it's probably going to weigh 17, 18, maybe a ton. And trying to get that out of there is going to be a real challenge. And Christine mentioned earlier, this is not real good chew food for a cow. You don't want this stuff getting down in the rumen, and it makes it very difficult to get it out from underneath. The other thing, some of you guys may go and tube this product, and you're moving it back and forth. So you may want to consider going to just a standard 48-inch net rather than a 50 or a 51, so that your net wrap placement is down here, so that every time that wrapper makes a push, it's not tearing or snagging this net. And maybe you just get a little bit here, a little bit there, but pretty soon if that happens bale after bale after bale, you've got a pretty good size bucket of crud there that, of net wrap that's been shredded and has been torn. So when you make that first bale, measure it, make sure it's the height that you want, make sure that it's at a weight that you or your end customer can feed and can handle safely. You're not going to try, if you've got a skid steer and you got a one ton bale of hay, he's going to be doing that teeter-totter thing, when he's trying to feed. Throw in a little mud, throw in some frozen ground, throw in some snow. It's even going to be more difficult. So, making the right size bale is critical to making sure that your customer's happy and that your cows are happy.
There's a lot of things, including your speed, that you can monitor from the cab. What are some of those controls we have sitting right next to us?
The controls that we have, the ability we have, is first and foremost is to determine the size of the bale. And the size of the bale will be determined by what moisture you're baling at. If you're making bale silage, this 4-foot bale is going to be a lot heavier than what we're talking about today. So if you're doing custom baling find out how he's going to feed it. Is he going to feed it with a tractor and a loader? Is he going to feed it with a skid steer loader? Just what's going to be, and don't exceed the capabilities that your customers have, to handle and feed the bale. All of those adjustments are made from the cab of the tractor on the monitor. So you simply set some buttons to determine the density and in many models the size of the bale.
Brent, what are some of the reasons we may want to adjust the density of the bale, either tighter or softer?
Well, if it's going to be like today's crop was very short, and it's very dry, and it's brittle, and it's hard to get it moving, hard to get it rolling. So you may have to adjust your core size just a little bit to make sure that you get the bale rolling and get everything going so that you can go on and build a bale quickly and make a nice even bale. The other thing is, like we said before, density. We want to make sure that today Aden had to do a lot of weaving back and forth, so we got even fill on this side of the bale and over there as well.
Brent, something that comes up with clients that I work with often is baling on a slope. And when that bale comes out, we want it to bounce a little bit and rest. We don't want it to go rolling down the hill and through the fence.
That's right. Yeah, that's one thing about naturally the round bale is when you're in your part of the world, if you drop it on the wrong spot, it's over the river and through the woods. It's gone. So you want to be mindful of maybe backing up and backing even or up so that your bale is going to be in a secure location. Some guys even have large hay pastures where they've gone out and they've made a flat spot, for maybe they're going to do some bale storage there. So when you cut this thing loose, if it's bale silage, this thing's going to be weighing 1,800 pounds, and it's going to roll downhill. You're not going to stop it. It's going right through the fence. It's going right until it comes to the creek or the woods or whatever.
Whatever type of hay you prefer to use, whether that's small squares, large squares, or round bales like this one, there's all kinds of different methods for feeding. Something that a lot of people do in my area is unroll the bale and feed it on the ground. That again can be easier or more difficult depending on how dense the bale is.
Yep.
And another thing to watch is your moisture levels for different sizes of bales. The larger the bale is, the drier it needs to be to store safely. We don't want to get into a risk of fire in a barn, and we also don't want our hay to mold if it's too wet. If we're making silage bales, you ideally want your moisture between 40% and 60% dry matter so that you get good fermentation and you don't have spoilage. You're also going to need to make sure that the bale is fully wrapped with no puncture holes, because air is not your friend when you're trying to make silage bales.
That's right. That's right. One thing, don't cheat yourself by trying to skimp a little bit and save a little money on buy quality net wrap and buy quality plastic, because it will make your life go a whole lot easier. And like Christine said, you've gone through this entire exercise to try to present, when it comes January, February, March, whenever you go to feed that bale, you want to open it up and you want to have something that smells good and is inviting to the cattle and also has good nutritional value.
Indeed. So another thing to watch as you're feeding, especially with round bales, is where the wrap ends up. Brent talked with us today about different types of wrap on bales. There are challenges with net wrap and twine wrap that can lead to animal ingestion, and that's certainly not something we want to happen. When we use wraps that are more durable because they're made out of plastic, they cannot degrade in the rumen. They get stuck there. And what you see when animals accidentally consume bale wrap is you have an animal that slowly starves to death because the forage gets tangled up in the mat of the rumen, mixed up with all that twine, that plastic, and you can cause death to the animals if you're not paying attention. So make sure that when you go to feed the bales, you fully remove and collect the wrap so that it doesn't wind up in the stomach of your animals.
That gets back to the quality you've got thousands of dollars invested in your machinery, in your crop and in your livestock. And to try to save a buck or two on cheap net wrap and cheap plastic, it's just not worth the risk. So, take due diligence, do your homework, talk to your neighbors, talk to other guys that are doing a lot of hay, see what works for them. The other thing to remember, this is a soft grass, so I don't have to I don't need, if I were to wrap this in plastic, I wouldn't have to put as many wraps on as I would with, say, alfalfa or sorghum Sudan, where I have more of a risk of puncture because of the stalks. So taking into consideration, the amount of plastic that you're going to put on is going to be relative to the type of hay that you're wrapping.
The next thing that we're going to do is evaluate some bales. We can make assumptions about quality by looking at the hay that we have, but the most reliable way to make assumptions about quality of the feed is to actually do a test through the laboratory. So real quickly, let's talk about how to do a good test. If you're going to sample a bale, whether it's net wrapped, twine wrapped, or wrapped in plastic, you want to go through this side of the bale, not the unwrapped side. When we go through this side, we're going to penetrate into the deeper layers of the bale and get a representative sample of all the forage that's in this bale. And then we'll do that to multiple bales, combine it into one sample, and send it off to the laboratory for analysis. You can take samples from plastic wrapped bales. Just make sure that you put a good patch on it after you take that sample. A lot of the folks in my area, they just feed with a bale spear, which is not ideal when you have plastic wrapped bales. So if you're going to get into wrapping, make sure that you are able to squeeze the bale instead of puncture the bale, so that you don't degrade quality over time.
That's right, that's right. And when you go to patch that hole or that tear, if you're going to handle them and move them around, you're going to have nicks, you're going to have tears. Don't try to patch it with duct tape. They make specific brand plastic wrap repair tape. It's the same material that's very, very sticky, and be sure that you use that. You know, the other thing that you mentioned is to take a representative sample, mix it up in a 5-gallon bucket, take all that, but with today's cordless drills and some of these probes, I know most of my guys, they have a probe, so we can take that sample without tearing the bale apart and just punch a small 1-inch hole in it, drill into the, it's just an auger, drill into the bale and get that sample. But here again, you know, the laboratory numbers will not lie. So when you make you're making your ration planning for the year, what your nutritional supplements may be, you've got something to go off of instead of guessing.
Work with your extension office to get that equipment. If you do not have a hay probe, you can order your own. It'll cost you about $200. But many extension offices or soil and water districts will have them available to borrow to collect your sample. And when you send those samples in for analysis, a good hay sample is going to cost you somewhere between $25 and $32-ish to get all the numbers that'll be really helpful with ration formulation. And when you're talking about the feed for your livestock all throughout the winter, trying to meet their needs, that's a small cost. Definitely worth the time and effort to get factual numbers to formulate your nutrition program.
I think we're ready to go find some cows.
Let's go.
And we'll feed up some of this hay that we made here at Farm Science Review.
Well, Brent, it's sure been fun making hay out here in the parking lot at Farm Science Review with me in the past couple days. We've enjoyed it. We hope you have too. We hope all our viewers have enjoyed the videos as well.
Well, I've enjoyed it as well, Christine. I know my entire crew appreciates everything, all the support that we get from the crew here at Farm Science, Nick and the entire team, and you. And you know, they say make hay while the sun shines. We sure had some beautiful weather to get it done, so we appreciate being part of it.
We definitely lucked out. We appreciate Krone taking the time to do these demonstrations with us and plugging our educational topics. If you're looking for more information about making high quality hay or improving your grazing system, you can find lots of information from our OSU Extension teams. We have a beef team, a sheep team, we have a forages team, an that all put out newsletters with information on a regular basis. You can also consult the Ohio Agronomy Guide for information on choosing crops and getting them planted. And for more localized assistance, you can contact your county extension educator. There is an extension office in all of Ohio's 88 counties, and we are here with free information to help you make your farm better. So don't hesitate to reach out if you ever need assistance. Brent, if people want to know more about Krone, where can they find more information?
If you're interested in anything about Krone and our lineup of hay and forage products, just go to Krone.-na.com and get to our website. You can follow us on Facebook or Twitter, and we can answer any of your questions. We'll get you hooked up with the dealer in your area so that you can go from virtual experience to an actual on-farm experience. Thanks again. We appreciate everything.
Thank you for joining us, Brent.
Take care, everybody. Be safe.
See you next year.